All right, guys. Hello. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. My name is Charlotte. If you don't know me, I manage our global community here at Evernote. I have a couple guests with me, as you can see. This is Francie and Jonathan. They are going to be sharing a lot of exciting content with you today, mostly about the project that they've been working on for the past 10 months, our brand relaunch, which you might have seen yesterday. So I will actually allow them to do a little bit of their own introduction instead of messing it up myself. So there you go, passing the mic.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Hi, community. I'm Francie Strong. I have been here at Evernote almost a year and a half. So I have to think about that because it seems both very fast and very long because so much has happened since I started. I came to Evernote from Twitter and have worked for Microsoft and Skype and worked on the agency side. Actually, that's where I met Jonathan many years ago. But I am thrilled to be here. My role at Evernote is heading up brand and communications. So thank you, Charlotte, for having me.
Yeah, it's a big job. We're glad to have you here.
Thanks, Charlotte and Francie. I'm Jonathan Woytek. I'm the Executive Creative Director here at Evernote. I have been here 7 months. Like Francie, I also come from an agency background, although more recently than Francie. As you have worked at many other clients prior to Evernote. I've worked for agencies RGA, Perrin Odell, McCann, Publicis, and Razorfish. I actually came on board here to work with Francie as part of the brand and marketing communications team to really focus on this brand refresh, redesign. I think when we got here, we weren't really sure which direction we were going to go. We were very much in the midst of the strategy phase, and the last 7 months has been exciting, energizing, a whirlwind, and we are glad that yesterday we revealed the refresh brand to the world.
Yes.
I'm also a longtime Evernote user, probably starting around 2009, and have used it for many of the other things that so many of our customers use it for.
Yep, as many of the people joining us today are as well.
Yep.
Awesome.
Great.
Yeah, so thank you both for those introductions. Jonathan, I keep wanting to call you JW.
Now that we've got the formalities out of the way, you can call me JW.
Also JW.
We have a lot of Jonathans.
Yes. Do you want to give a little bit of a show and tell for the relaunch or the refresh of our brand?
Absolutely. So we have some slides we're going to go through. I'm sure most folks have seen it out in the world now, have hopefully seen some of the conversation about it, both on the community site and social and the blog post, Chris's blog post. So we're going to kind of go into a little bit more detail around the what's and the whys of how we arrived where we did. And I think a good place to start is just the strategic underpinnings of where we landed. So this is going to be Francie kind of leading in with that and just sort of what our initial objectives were.
Absolutely. I think that, whenever you want to undertake something as big as a brand refresh, you have to really think about, does this make strategic sense for the company? Because really the first step, there's so much more to a brand refresh than just the sort of look and feel and the sort of voice and tone. But even just changing those things is incredibly time intensive and resource intensive to do. But when we were looking at where we were as a company and really how we had grown and changed over the decade or so that Evernote's been around, it became really apparent that a brand refresh strategically made a lot of sense. And there was a couple of things that were really sort of in the forefront of our mind. One of it was around signaling change. Visually, the brand was developed in 2008, and they did a fantastic job. They did, Gabe and Andrew back in the day, they created a really iconic brand. And I think the fact that that it was able to last for a decade without really much change speaks to the strength of the original brand. However, a lot has changed around in Evernote in terms of our products, how much we've grown, sort of our reasons for existing in the world, I think has evolved and changed over time. And so we wanted to signal that change. And one of the best ways to do that is through how you look, your sort of logo and mark as a way to signal that. The second thing is actually positioning us for growth, because Evernote is so much more than the original note-taking app that we started. And so we wanted to elevate the brand and have a little separation between that original app and all the things that Evernote does, and give us all a little bit of space to grow, and also future-proof us a bit, because there may be other things that we come up with that we haven't even thought of yet, and we wanted the brand to be able to support that. Mm-hmm. So one of the things, like with any good creative, when you're, whether it's a campaign or a brand or whatever, it has to be driven by insight. And sort of back in my agency days, I used to call it like the human truth. Like, what is the thing that is the real thing that people can connect to, so that as you're developing your creative or your brand identity, people have a connection to it that is real. And so we did a lot of research. We talked to tons of people all over the world, and to develop some insights. And the thing that was universal across our consumer audiences, our business audiences, from in every market that we talked to, was this idea of overwhelm. And this isn't new. Many of you have probably seen some of the white papers and some of the things that we've done around this. Information overload is not a new concept. But the thing that was really interesting is that this cognitive overwhelm, this feeling of information overload, was the one thing that was very real, very persistent, and the thing that people that use Evernote felt there were ways that they could actually combat that with the organization and using the product. So it felt like the right insight to grasp on.
This is a super high level point that is simplifying months and months of research and lots of data to just sort of arrive at this.
So basically, this is a very simplified view of the brand strategy. Those of you with marketing backgrounds, this probably looks very familiar. But basically, we decided to drive our brand primarily around sort of purpose and personality. And that was really the thing that was really important. The mission that we had, I'm going to do this a little bit out of order, because actually we developed it a little out of order. Originally, we actually developed the mission, which is a little about how we go about doing things, before we had completely developed the brand strategy. And this idea of helping individuals and groups remember everything, turn ideas to action, and work together has been our mission really since the end of last year. I worked very closely with Chris O'Neill to consolidate his ideas and his thinking into this mission statement. And I think it really does speak to all the different ways that people are using Evernote today, with a nod to our past and remember everything, with a nod to the future around AI and machine learning, and some of the new features around turning ideas to action and working together in collaboration. But we needed a purpose. We needed something that really connected people. And when we talked to people, when we looked at how we use the products, when we talked to employees, this idea of focus became the thing that was really important. And so helping people focus on what matters most felt like it was the emotional connection and that purpose. Like, why does Evernote exist in the world? Really to help people focus on what matters most. A brand promise is something that's internally facing, and it's a little bit of a North Star. And this is this idea of ever better. And we came up with this in a bit to a nod of the fact that Evernote is not a silver bullet. It'd be amazing if you download Evernote and instantly everything was better and organized, but it doesn't work that way. And it's this idea that if you do a little bit every day, if you try a little, you can make your life better. You can constantly, that work, that ethic, that discipline, combined with the tools to help you, that's what's going to make it better. It's also great internally as for employees, because we look at our product and all the things that we have to do, and every day we want to make the product better for our community, for our users, for everyone. And so I think this was a really nice way to represent that. DNA is something, some brands call it personality. It's sort of boiled down to 4 words here. There's obviously a lot that goes underneath it. And for any brand nerds out there, you understand what I'm saying is like debating adjectives was a very long process, and there was a lot of passion over many different words. The ones we finally ended up with were optimistic, clever, confident, and clear. Optimistic because, you have to really believe that things can get better. Clever, we want to have some fun, and that sort of clever quirkiness has always been a part of Evernote. We didn't want to lose it.
Mm-hmm.
Confident, we have a strong point of view. We've been always a little bit of an introspective brand, and we wanted to be very confident because we believe, and we also believe in our mission, and clear because we don't want to add to the overwhelm. And then the last bit was we added this layer of beliefs because I think it's sometimes hard to relate to these things. And we wanted everyone to really understand, like, these are the things that we stand for in the world. The first one is we believe in the promise of people. Stepan had this amazing quote when we were interviewing him where he talked about anyone can change the world. You can be a taxi driver or a scientist or a teacher or just a random person, right? And that was not his quote. That is my really bad version of his quote. But the sentiment of his quote was basically, it doesn't matter what your background is, you have something to offer the world. And that was fundamental to his belief, and it's fundamental to our belief.
And for those who don't know, Stepan is the original founder and creator of Evernote.
Yes, Stepan Pachikov.
Mm-hmm.
We believe technology should be used for good. I mean, we are a technology company, but when this idea of information overwhelm, we realize that technology is a lot of the reason why people feel overwhelmed today. And we really want to be part of the solution. And so that's where that comes from. We believe people are not products. We do not monetize our users. We do not sell their data. These have been deliberate decisions from the very beginning of Evernote, and it's something that we're very proud of. As Chris says, he believes that we are on the right side of history here, and I think that it's one of our fundamental beliefs. We believe working together we become greater. I think this is the one that speaks to you guys as a community. This truly, it speaks to our collaboration and things, but really I see it as all the people that use Evernote are impacting the world in big ways and small, and that's something really cool to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And the last bit is a bid to our past, which is around, we believe people's ideas and memories are worth preserving forever. And this really, really gets to the reason why Stepan originally invented Evernote. And that is because he believes that what you leave behind in your legacy is your memories and your ideas, and you never know when those may become important, so you should always save them.
And I think as we started moving from the establishing the sort of revised brand purpose and platform, how does that begin to translate into creative? And we started with words, and it's up on the screen for you to read. I will do a live
this is a lot of words.
reading of this. This was written by Forrest Bryant, who's our director of content editorial here. You also may know him as the host of our Taking Note podcast. But this is where we really started taking these things, these system of beliefs, a mission statement, a promise and a purpose, and having them evolve into kind of a creative path that would then translate both into all of the changes we made to the logo, the word mark, the system, our tone of voice. So what matters to you? Too often we lose sight of what matters. People today are overwhelmed by tasks, by information, by the chaos of life. The time and energy that should go into improving our lives vanishes into the restless urgency of now. But strip away the clutter to focus on what truly matters, and something magical happens. The passion for our work returns. Knowledge generates insights. Insights spark actions. Actions become achievements. And little by little, we regain control of our days. We lead more satisfying lives when we become our better selves. That's the Evernote way. It's a way that encourages growth and values all your interests at work or at home. A way that can make everyone a little calmer, a little smarter, and a little more focused each and every day. Because focused people, driven by passion, can transform their lives. And when they join forces, they can transform the world. We believe that every individual and community shares this power. We believe that your thoughts and memories are what make you unique and can be the start of something great. We believe that better technology can replace distraction and anxiety with inspiration and creativity. And we believe that human beings should never be treated like commodities. What matters most to Evernote? You, your thoughts, your work, moving forward, reaching farther, finding your way in the world. What is Evernote? The way to focus on what matters most. So that is a very lovely written distillation of the strategy. And from that, we kind of moved into identity. And we started with the most obvious place, which was our greatest asset, our logo mark and our word mark. I think to Francie's point, the original designers of this did a wonderful job. There's a lot of detail in the Medium article that was published yesterday that just kind of talks about the process. For your sake, I'm going to try to give you a little bit more insight and some anecdotes of things that were not published in the article. When I started 7 months ago, probably everybody's main spoken and unspoken concern was, what are we going to do with Mads, our elephant?
Internally, very much so.
I'm sure community members feel the same way. Mads is well loved. For a first logo mark out of the gate for a brand, amazing job. It has stood the test of time. And I think as part of a creative being brought in to explore the possibilities of a brand refresh, it was important to say, what else could it be? We won't know until we see it. And sometimes you have to see it to sort of know you like something better. So we work with our partners design studio. They kind of went away for the design portion of it. They were also very involved in all the strategic repositioning and came back with about 7 different territories that they showed us. And I mean, some of them lost the color green completely.
Yeah.
There was a direction that was red and blue and bearded guys with tattoos. It felt like a beer.
It sounded like they were just trying to scare you guys into the elephant again.
It's weird for them because as a branding agency, you kind of want your work to be completely unique to you. Mm-hmm. And I think to their credit, they even realized that all of the options that they had shown us did not really stand up.
But I think that creatively, oftentimes you have to take things to extremes to understand what feels right. And so as far as the creative process went, that's exactly what happened. Yep. We went to extremes and we really debated that because arguably some of the designs that they presented from a pure design perspective were beautiful, and but they just didn't feel right for Evernote or where we are today. And that's why we ended up where we did.
And I mean, there's other considerations, creating a system where our designers, both internally, members of the community, partners, people in the press, can sort of take our assets when the brand is out of your control. And you still provide that toolkit to kind of have that consistency that you want when you don't have 100% of control of it.
And just what you guys were sharing just a couple seconds ago, the brand is more than just a look and a feel. Yep. It's so much more. It's, you know, our ethos. It's how we should feel about our brand, how our customers should feel about our brand, and how, you know, we look at products and people should have an experience inside of the product.
Yeah, 2 things about the logo and the mark that really sort of distill the brand, and I think distill other things that will happen as a result of sort of our renewed focus. Pun intended. The elephant is green, and we went with a pure black in the word mark, and a lot of that is about being confident and being clear. We were gray and sort of a light green before, and we used a lot of gradients. And I think that we wanted to be more straightforward and a little bit bolder with the mark.
Which is a great segue into just looking at the mark. A lot of this is mentioned in the Medium post, but there was about a month when we decided we were going to stick with Mads the elephant and just make some modifications, give it a sort of a very considered makeover, where we went, you know, back and forth with different rounds, doing things very subtle. Like there was a lot of conversation. Do we keep the bump at the top of the head? We looked at options without it. And this is sort of, it just felt right. It felt like we didn't want to completely lose the shape of where we had been, but we wanted to round out the geometry, sort of soften the overall logo mark. The roundness is much more of a classic logo mark versus the sort of geometrically square logo that we had previously, which was great. It lended itself a little bit more cartoon-like and less like an actual like brand logo. So rounding out the spiral and the trunk, softening the eye, shortening and rounding the ear, increasing the size of the fold in the ear, which when we talk about Stepan, you know, his vision of remembering everything, again, that fold in the ear, that reminder is a nod to him. So we wanted to articulate that in a clearer way. And so when this logo mark scales down, that you sort of like don't lose that detail. To Francie's point, when we looked at the word mark, we wanted something that still had a very literary feel to it. Evernote is in great part about words and the words that you put into it and recall from it. The 100% black gives it this sense of clearness and clarity. And we historically have had a serif word mark. We looked at lots of sans serif. Just this morning, we were reading some chatter on some design blogs about a geometric sans serif, and maybe that would have looked better with the rounded out logo mark. We certainly looked at those things, and it did not. It really felt off when we sort of lost the sophistication of a serif word mark. So just a couple of looks at our primary and secondary lockups of that, how we use that on color. Historically, there wasn't a lot of discipline around how we use that logo and word mark against color. Here, we always want the green elephant and the black word mark on white, and when we're on another color field, we will reverse it out. I will say a little bit of a sneak peek into how this continually evolves, because we have poured the slab, if you will, right? Like we are framing up the house, and it will continue to be built over time. But we think it might be interesting to actually put a green Mads with a white logo mark on black for some sort of special tier or promotional piece, which will be determined sometime in the future.
Great.
Here's just a look at how it compares with the old mark. Again, there's just sort of a more of a roundness, and there's more balance. When I came on board, the existing logo mark, especially the horizontal one, felt very much, I called it a Pez dispenser, but not with all due respect, because I love Pez dispensers, but it's very imbalanced, heavily weighted to the left, and now there just feels greater balance in it. And then color was another thing that we looked at in great detail. We knew that green, there was a lot of equity in green for us, both from the minute that we appeared in the App Store as sort of a green app icon when everybody else in our space were reds and blues. That was something that we wanted to kind of lean into. We didn't want to lose that. So we decided, to Francie's point, to go to a pure color green. It's a little bit more vibrant. And then to kind of continue along that path of vibrancy, brought this lighter green. Some call it a chartreuse. Some call it a kind of a lime green as a supporting color. We use that very sparingly. We have certainly found, and you guys may find as you see it across different displays, both in mobile and laptop or desktop, it can be a little volatile and present a little bit differently. So we say that we use it as hot sauce, right? Yeah. It's just like a sprinkle, but not the kind of hot sauce you drench your food in. And then grays, if you start seeing in product, there is a separate UI color palette. This is really our marketing and communications, our brand color palette. But in product, there are going to be some blues and some reds, especially for things like air states. So the UI team and the product team worked very closely with us just in developing this system, because our product is the most important asset in our brand, right? So they were a part of the team that kind of developed this and have also taken it and evolved components of it for use in product. Here's a look at the new app icon. This feels really strong because the contrast of the green on white and the contrast of the white against what most people have as a home screen on their mobile devices, which is generally a photograph, works really well. Before, when we had the sort of the green gradient, depending on what image people had on their screen, that could sort of blend in a little bit. And we want our app to stand out. We want, when people look at their phones, we want their kind of attention, or their focus, you might say, to be pulled back to it. And then patterns.
This is exciting.
I spoke a little bit earlier about creating a system and this kind of kit of parts, not only for our internal creative team, but for anybody that touches our brand. And so we wanted to kind of break down all the different component parts and have some meaning behind them and patterns. If before yesterday, if you look a lot on some of the artwork that was posted for our blog or in social, we were beginning to use a lot of textures on color just to kind of enrich the illustrations that we did. And that was very much like, oh, I like the way that texture looks like, but there wasn't, there wasn't real meaning behind it. So with Design Studio, they actually brought us this idea of having this system of patterns that all had meaning behind them, even if that meaning is not clear to the end user or the person seeing that piece of marketing. To us, it is. So this plus sign represents integration, how we work well with other products and partners. The heart represents what matters most to each individual. The up arrow represents the potential. We believe in the promise of people. This is the potential of people. And when you really reduce those down to just almost like dots, they become a nice texture that we're using as fills in our illustration style. The stars represent greatness. The series of dots represents teamwork, many things working together as one. The check marks represent achievement. So these are kind of the meaning behind these patterns, and you'll see as we move through this presentation, we then can take that pattern and scale it up, and it can stand alone, or it can be used with just a few patterns to sort of adorn an image, or it can be used as a mask. So super flexible system. The stairs, or some call them the squigglies, represent this idea of step by step. To Francie's point, Evernote's not a panacea. It doesn't cure all your ills. It's a tool that you download and that you use, and if you have some discipline around it, you'll see the changes in your life. And then this sort of vertical stripe, diagonal stripe represents this idea of climbing, and again, kind of upward trajectory. So I said illustration. We have always been a brand that has used illustration a lot. We've had some amazing illustrators come through here and do great work for us. A lot of that stylistically very much came from that illustrator's personal style. And as we, scale our marketing department, our creative studio to the work that we have, we bring in other designers and creatives. It became difficult to kind of maintain consistency across the illustration style. So we went with a system of illustration that is using very simple shapes with our limited color palette, with our pattern fills in a way that we feel is very repeatable. There's also meaning behind this. So when we talk about Evernote being a tool to help you focus on what matters most, a big part of that focus is just getting organized and organizing your life. And for the folks that are watching this, you know that as much as anybody, both in terms of how Evernote has helped you and how you help other people use the product. And we call this compartmentalization because we feel like being organized is not the absence of all of the information that you're overloaded with, but it's being able to compartmentalize and then deal with each piece of it in turn as whatever priority you're looking for. So we wanted this illustration style to kind of represent that. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of information in these illustrations, but it is organized in a way of compartmentalization. So I turn your ideas into action. For our collaboration tools, this idea of working effortlessly together. This harkens back to Stepan's vision of Evernote being like a second brain. So the brain has lots of fans, and the brain has some not so
I think the brain is our most controversial illustration.
I even saw a comment today about like the brain just isn't working for some people.
Yeah.
And then just showing how when we go really literal with this system, like we work across all these devices, how it kind of still works in an illustrative manner. This is what I was talking about, how the shapes that the patterns are based on, you can actually scale up and then even put more pattern inside of them so that they can stand on their own as individual assets. And then typography, while our main logo wordmark is a typeface called Publico, everything else is going to be a typeface called Soleil, which is very close to kind of a geometric sans. It is a sans, it just sort of works better in product. It works better as a display font in all of our marketing communications, where in the past we've used several different typefaces from Gotham to Helvetica Neue to sometimes Arial. We are going to, over the next 6 to 9 months, just consistently deploy this typeface in everything. Again, this was a decision that the product team was very heavily involved in influencing, because when they put different types into product and it's down at 9-point font, it can break down very easily, become difficult to read, and that legibility is the most important thing for when you're using our product, especially on a mobile device. Here's some look at just, again, another way to use this design system is this typographic art with these sort of very straightforward messages that we feel embody our brand, our mission statement, and our brand belief. These are fun. I mean, these are things that I don't have one of the t-shirts on now, but we have several of these t-shirts floating around with these designs.
But your t-shirt is in the new design.
It is the new design.
Yes.
And it is white on black.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you can't see him because he's a tiny little box.
So
we'll show you here in a second. We're almost
at the end, and I'll show you. So photography was something that we historically have not used a lot of. We actually have one of our photographers here who's handling our number one photographer here, who's handling the webinar, who has done sort of wonderful work. But a lot of times, just at the scale of marketing communications, you end up using a lot of stock photography. And we wanted something that made anything that we do in terms of photography feel ownable. So this is just an example of how we use that system of shapes and patterns to apply to photography to make it really feel like it's part of our system and part of our brand. It's also really interesting when you take that idea of typographic artwork and then integrate it with photography. It's a place where we can have a lot of fun and a little inside joke around this particular piece.
Oh, this is what I call the better beer beater slide.
This is the better beer beater slide.
Oh, because of the typos.
Yes.
I see
that. And then when we talk about stock photography, which is something that we'll still continue to use, by simply applying one of these shapes as a mask and adding a few other pieces to it, it takes sort of your very generic stock photograph and it just gives it a sense of treatment that is ownable to the brand. So those are all exciting developments in this sort of kit of parts. And as you then kind of take a step back, I know I've gone pretty quickly through all of that stuff, and just look at the system as a whole, you see how everything works together, from the typographic art to the treatment of photography to very simple copy, turn ideas into action. Like, it doesn't need to be any more fancy than that. There are times where we want to have a little bit more clever tone of voice and some fun with what we say. But again, the really limited palette pulls it all together. And that is phase one of the Evernote brand refresh.
Awesome. That's great. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely.
This is great. I mean, it's been really fun watching you guys come to this. I know that there was a lot of closed door conversations around the brand because you wanted it to be a surprise for the internal teams as much as the customers. So we were a little bit in the dark. It was that question of, will Mads live? But it's been really nice to see. We're not really afraid to use color anymore, even if it is a simple color palette. It is a little bit more expressive, and it is more focused, as you guys continue to nod to.
And it will evolve as well, right? Like at some point, even if members of the community and consumers out in the world don't get tired of seeing a limited color palette, for those of us that work with it every day, day in and day out, there's going to come a point in time where the designer's going to be like, can we please add another color to the palette? So that will happen.
Now, this is a phased rollout. We did kind of the announcement yesterday, which had our home screen on our website, which is beautiful. If you guys have not gone to check it out, evernote.com, as well as the new logo and font. What are some of the other different phases that we can expect?
Well, the website was more than home screen. We actually completely redesigned the website, and we'll continue to roll that out. The next phase will include the community pages, which makes Charlotte really happy. And but anytime that we started with the core, brand. We started with some basic things in the product, the website, the app stores, sort of our high volume areas is kind of where we started. Our community pages, additional pages on the site, like our Help and Learning Center will eventually be rebranded, and our careers pages, all of that sort of thing. In addition, in the brand architecture, again, we started with the master brand. So as we start thinking about other aspects like the community, we'll continue to evaluate sort of what kind of brand assets we need for as tools. And of course, we've started with some basic toolkits and some basic things for everyone. But as Jonathan said, this is a journey. And this was probably one of the more interesting conversations with Andrew Malcolm and with Chris. Is it's not like a campaign where it's, you do it on a date and then you launch it and you're done. A brand is a journey. And even though yesterday was amazing and we've launched it, it's the beginning. And so we will continue to evolve and roll things out.
That's a great point. And there is a lot that we're hoping to include the community with this brand refresh. As you shared, we are working on refreshing our community page and certified consultant page. So that's a very exciting project that will be rolled out in the next couple months. We have a couple of resources that we were able to create together as a team for our community to go out and make sure that they're educated on this brand, that they understand what our messaging is and how they play a part in that. I know that you guys were so kind to create this brand folder. So now everybody has the new assets, the new colors. So that was in the email sent out yesterday. If you did not get it, feel free to message me and I will give you that link. We have a number of other resources. We're working on voice and tone. So there's one version of the voice and tone for the Evernote brand, but even customer voice and tone and community voice and tone.
Absolutely. And messaging too. So that's the other pieces in terms of answering what is Evernote and how do you describe the products and what are the value props of things. I think giving everyone some basic messaging that we know works and resonates just as a toolkit, not like a script, but as a starting place so everyone has a shared understanding of how we're positioning everything.
Now, I know you guys can't see the chat here, but everyone is writing in that they love the new look.
Yay!
There is one question, and this is a great question because I know that it's something we're asking ourselves. Everyone keeps asking about swag, especially with Jonathan doing a modeling gig for us here.
We there are many designs for swag, from t-shirts to coffee cups to umbrellas. We have spoke about opening up sort of an online repository to access. I don't know what timing of that is. We have seen designs, potential designs for new ECC badges. So this is rolling thunder, right? Like there's still a lot of work to do in getting all of this stuff ready for everything.
Yeah, and I think that swag is interesting because when you roll out a new brand, so what we find, we knew this going in, but green is a very unforgiving color. And so even though we have Pantone colors, we have all this matching, we did an internal event where it was the first time we'd actually rolled out the brand. And I think only one thing that we did turned out to be the right shade of green. So we have a lot of experimenting to do for swag, but fear not, we are working on it and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, and I think that just kind of speaks to there's so much more coming. There's so much more to be excited about and look forward to.
The typographic art is great, right? Because we can just keep cranking out t-shirts in a certain style, and
they can all be different.
And they can all be different.
It's fun.
Yes, but just know everything is coming. We're working on it. We're so excited to share with all of you. So let's see. There's some other kind of questions here that we want to make sure that we understand how the community is fitting into this new brand. And I know that we have different projects that we're working on, but how is it that we're also thinking about our customers in this brand, as well as how we're going to be building our product to fit with this brand?
So I think I talked a little bit about the strategy, right? And I think that when you think about brand as more than just the look and the feel and the tone, even though that's amazing and it's really fun and it's the most visible part of the brand at first, it's really about having that clear point of view and constantly getting feedback about how that applies. So I think that having Evernote have a very, very clear point of view about what we're focused on is only a starting point. I think now it's engaging with the community and understanding how that applies and how best to sort of interact and make that purpose meaningful. Giving feedback to the product teams so that they understand. So a focus on what matters most, and this idea of focus, we want to see more of that in the product. We don't want Evernote to add to overwhelm. We want Evernote to be clear and easy to use and all of these things. And I think that is one way that, of course, we didn't need the brand to want that feedback, but I think this gives a framework for the product design and the product teams that they didn't actually have before, that aligns with the way that we talk about the brand, that's rooted in real insights based from talking with customers. So like everything is connected now in a really, really great way. So now that we start to have organic changes, it's going to be rooted in a strategy that is thought through, which is exciting.
100%.
And that umbrella of focusing on what matters most just gives it's a big tent to tell stories within. And I think members of the community, customers, your partners and your customers, like mining those stories and figuring out a way to tell more of them and hear more of them is going to be great for the brand, because we've sort of shifted from being purely about something around productivity and organization to something that's rooted in a more emotional place.
100%. And, you know, a lot of times we end up working for technology. And I think that with this brand relaunch, this is an opportunity for us to step back and realize that we have intention in building product that allows people to live their life.
Yep. Yeah.
And I'm very excited to work for a brand that that focuses on that. And I know that everyone joining us here today is also passionate about Evernote, mostly because of that. So awesome. Are there any questions from the community? This is a great opportunity for you to ask the inventors of the newly refreshed Evernote brand.
We're about representatives of a very large team.
So there's a question about changes under the hood. So I think that this is mostly like what's coming next. We talked about the phased out rollout. I think that it'd be really interesting kind of talking about how our product is going to change based off of this newly refocused brand.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about it at a high level, and I think you can talk about some of the specific design things. So like I said, this one of the things that the product designers were really, really loved in the PMs I spoke to also was the DNA. So those adjectives are getting a lot of traction here because it actually gave them ways to think about a user experience, like how do I make this more clear? Is there a more clever way for me to communicate this idea? Or, you know, it became a really interesting framework for them to start thinking about the way that they do things. Also, the idea of focus. I was just in a meeting with Eric, our Chief Product Officer, and we talked a little bit about this idea of focus. And a lot of the features that we're developing, if you start to think about how do you get people the opportunity to focus more on what matters to them, and it becomes a communications narrative that also then becomes a way of thinking about product and feature development. The short answer is I don't actually know how it's going to manifest over time because we're so at the beginning of this journey. But what I do know is there's incredible excitement and passion, and there's alignment in the company to really start thinking about things in new ways.
Yeah, and just in terms of how, from a design standpoint, how whatever changes we make in product manifest in terms of reflection of the new brand. Nate Fortin, who is our head of product design, is very intimately involved in this process. Aiden Bordner, who's on his team, works very closely with my team. I think coming out of the gate, there was just sort of some table stakes that had to be done, updating the logo, left rail, they sort of darkened a little bit.
Right.
What is the contrast there? Implementing the new typeface. As they sort of move through those things and we look at more structural or fundamental changes, it's just going to be an ongoing conversation that sort of ties back to Francie's point. What are we trying to achieve? And is that an accurate representation of who we say we are as a brand?
Totally. I totally agree with that. And I agree with you. There is a lot of alignment internally. That's been really wonderful to watch. Everyone come together and focus.
Yep.
But one of the other things is we've always been a very customer-centric brand, and just even bringing that back into the product roadmap has been really exciting. I know there's a lot of questions here in our chat about some of the tools that you guys are going to be able to have to kind of help us spread this message of focusing on what matters to an individual. Your family, your life, your work, those are the things that matter. So we will be rolling those out to you. Thank you for all of your kind words. I have a comment here, brand development is a major undertaking, and it's so true.
It is.
It is.
So
and
true.
we did it fairly quickly in the sort of the grand scheme of things of how long these processes usually take.
It normally takes a year.
Yep.
They asked us to do it in 6 months. We did it in 10. But yeah, it's great.
Thank you for recognizing that.
Yeah.
Whoever posted.
So I have one last question before we kind of close up here. What has been the highlight for each of you guys in this project in contrast to what has been the biggest challenge?
Oh,
It's a hard question.
it is a hard question. So I actually think the biggest highlight for me is that when you undertake a project like this, it's not just a marketing or communications or brand thing, which we tend to work with our work groups a lot. It is such a foundational thing to the company. I got to speak with so many different people, spent a lot of time with Stepan Pachikov, our founder, to members of our board, to the people from engineering and customer service and sales and community members and just everybody. I think for me, that was a highlight, especially being relatively new to Evernote. It was the most amazing way to get to know the product and get to know all the different people. That for me was absolutely the highlight. I would also say that was probably the biggest challenge, is that everyone's really, really passionate about the brand. And as soon as you say, we're going to be touching the brand, everybody has an opinion. So I think that, I've done this at other companies. It wasn't any more challenging here, but I think that's always the most challenging thing when you're undergoing something as cross-functional as this, is making sure you're balancing the bringing everyone in to the having to incorporate everybody's opinion, which is impossible, of course, to do.
Change is hard.
Yes.
Yep. It is.
All right, Jonathan.
I think for me, the time that we got to spend with Stepan, so we spent some time with him in New York. We made sort of a little short doc style film with him, took a portrait of him, but being able to hear and feel his vision and how relevant and important it still is to him. And it's not an opportunity you get a lot when sort of you work at places to be that close to sort of the founder's guiding vision. So that was a highlight. And the day after that, we went to Newark and we spent half a day with Lindsay Holmes.
Yes.
So a community member, telling her story, getting to hear, how Evernote has impacted her life, how it's helped her focus what matters most. So that kind of 2-day back-to-back was probably the highlight for me. I would say the biggest challenge was just being the new guy, right? And being the new person that's sort of being brought in from a creative perspective to look at making some of these changes, especially when you have people who've been here 4, 5, 6 years and have really kind of grown with this company. And when you're sort of the new person, you have not invested that amount of time, there are concerns about the decisions you'll make. So when people, I think another highlight was just internally when we sort of revealed it, and the people that work here felt good about it, that was a big hurdle for us to clear, I think.
Yes. And Lindsay's actually on the call with us today. So
hi, Lindsay.
So yeah, anyways, that was a great ending. Thank you guys so much for joining us. This has been a wonderful kind of dive into the newly refreshed brand. I hope that everyone joining us here today enjoyed the kind of under the hood look at our brand, and we hope that you're excited about it. So again, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, cboyd@evernote.com, and this will be recorded so you can watch it again. But anyways, thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Thank you.
And we will be in touch later.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.